Thanks. So first, just on behalf of everybody here, I want to thank Bambi and the Vator team for putting together one of the most, in my mind, one of the most well-crafted and therefore one of the most valuable conferences put on for entrepreneurs. So thank you. So I've come a number of times, and I assume, like me, you come for many of the reasons Bambi said. For me, primarily, I think it's about getting inspired by terrific leaders and maybe coming out with a few kernels of wisdom, a few insights that you can apply to your entrepreneurial venture, your path going forward. And I can't think of anybody better for a keynote to introduce this evening and kick things off than Phil Libin. Phil was born in the Soviet Union in Leningrad, or now St. Petersburg, came over in 1979 at 8 years old to the US, to the Bronx. Comes to the Bronx not speaking English at all, and by the end of 3 months this summer, he was fluent. Of course, he worked with great pedagogical texts. I think he said that two things he focused on to learn were Thor, comics, and What's Happening, the TV show. And he said he does actually distinctly remember the first book he read and how he has the memory of reading it or looking at it the first time before he could read, and it was all gibberish. And then the second memory of, at the end of the summer, having read the book, having full comprehension of that same book. And I thought, what a terrific memory you want to keep, and maybe a great illustration of the power of special memories and the need and the value of being able to have tools to help augment and help you remember those things forever. So Phil grew up in the Bronx in a family of modest means on food stamps, and he had to go to work early. So he was at Bronx Science. His first job was at Carvel. Heard of Carvel? And if you're from the East Coast, everybody knows Carvel is an ice cream shop with, at the very least, very good commercials. And so he gets the job there, and as he explained, it turned out that the main thing they sell is soft serve ice cream, which you have to do the swirl on the top of it. And he gets the job and finds out that the primary goal is to make the swirl look good, but have no ice cream inside the cone. Of course, he pushed back. He was the one who wanted to actually give quality cone with actual ice cream in it, but corporate policy was to be as efficient as possible, save as much money for the company, show off the sizzle but not the substance, so just put the ice cream on the top but none inside. He refused and was fired. Attaboy, right? Years later, I can't help but think that company hasn't really lasted as a great, thriving company, but Phil's values, his principles of trying to offer a great product, deliver something that he promises on, has thrived in Phil and all of the companies that he's worked on so far. I believe that was the birth of his entrepreneurialism. There's probably more in his DNA than just that, but then he went on to start a number of companies. First company he started was a PC building company in high school, which he sold. I think his first exit was for $500? 500 big ones. I should have been scared when we did the investment at $1 billion pre. But then he went on to do, many entrepreneurial ventures. He put himself through BU, and then 2 years out of BU, he started his own company. He started his own company called Engine 5, which he grew over 5 years. One of the first Java-based e-commerce shops out there that he sold to Vignette. Had another success after that with the second company and in the security space. And then he started Evernote, which Evernote, I'm sure all of you know, aspires to be a family of apps and services that helps the world remember everything. And they have over 50 million people today, individuals who use Evernote. And that's in a company that spends like zero on customer acquisition marketing, on spending to acquire customers. They do it by offering a great product, and then people just come. In fact, the most recent product was a small business product launched 2 months ago, Evernote for Business. And again, without a sales force and a whole marketing engine, they put up the offer, and they've now already have, in 2 months, 2,000 businesses. Give me a minute more. He doesn't get to show this stuff off. It's so cool. So, so now I am lucky to be an investor in Evernote, along with Gary back there from Morgenthaler, who was one of the earliest investors in the company, and Roloff from Sequoia. And I feel lucky every day to have been an investor in Evernote for a few reasons. One, love the product. Two, I think it's going to be a great return for Ameritech as an investment. But three, and most importantly, I get so much value out of learning from and interacting with Phil and his team. In a world where I would say everybody sort of lionizes the quick pivot and the quick flip and the clever, cool new app that you talk about for a short time and it's gone, Phil comes at it with a refreshingly different point of view. He goes after a really hard problem, how to augment human memory, a really important problem that if he changes the world, he changes it to make it a better place. He goes after it by building an aligned team of employees and himself and his customers are all trying to accomplish the same thing. And he goes after it for now 4 or 5 years with a consistent vision to build something long-term that his grandchildren, our grandchildren will talk about or potentially will all be using. So every interaction I've had in my career so far with Phil has been extraordinary. I've learned a ton, and so in that vein, I'm really excited to get a chance for you guys to hear from him and learn from him. So let me introduce Phil Libin.
Thank you. You're welcome. Oh, I actually need this mic. Thank you. Thank you, Craig. That was great. Thank you to everyone. I'm very happy to be here. You know, that Carvel story is totally true. There is maybe a slightly different way to spin it, which is, you know, getting none of the ice cream to go inside the cone actually took a fair amount of manual dexterity that I was just completely lacking because I'm such a giant nerd, and so I couldn't really do it. You know, you have to operate the machine, and you have to twist a cone in just the right amount of time, and it was a lot of work. And so I think I let my moral outrage, you know, build up as I couldn't actually accomplish making a ice cream cone that was to spec to Carvel corporate specifications. So had I been, you know, had I had faster hands, I may have had looser moral standards. But that's not how it worked out. You know, I've been a CEO for most of my adult life. I guess 1997 was kind of the first company I started, and I kind of just declared myself a CEO. I was a programmer, and so my first few jobs was programmer, and then I skipped over all of the stuff. I never had a management position. At one point, I just said, "Hey, so I'm the CEO, right?" And no one challenged it, so I just kind of stuck. And so I've been a CEO for a while, but I've only in the past couple of years, maybe in the past year or two at Evernote, ever felt like that wasn't completely a scam. Like that wasn't completely, you know, just a joke. That like sooner or later someone is going to like catch on. I still fear that very much, but a little bit less so, because I do think that what we've managed to build at Evernote is something substantive, is something real. And so just in the past maybe 2 years, I've started being invited and hanging out with, you know, with real CEOs. At various conferences, at various events, I've, you know, been able to spend time with actual CEOs of large public companies and talk to them and go out drinking. And I'll let you in a kind of a little secret. Whenever a bunch of CEOs get together and there's no one else in the room, we kind of sit around, you know, drinking. Almost always, one of them will say, you know, being a CEO, it's really a lonely job. And everyone will agree, this is generally held principle by CEOs, that it is in fact quite lonely. And everyone will say, yeah, very lonely, very lonely. So, you know, it's tough to really find, you know, someone to talk to. It's tough to you know, to make a decision. It's really kind of a lonely job. And people will say, yeah, it's very lonely. And everyone agrees, and I agree. And usually this is right around time when I lean forward and I say, but it beats working, right? It beats having a job. And that's also widely agreed among CEOs. Because it is actually pretty great People ask me what it's like to be the CEO of Evernote, and it's awesome. I'm having the time of my life. It's extremely fun. It's extremely gratifying. And I've been lucky enough over the past couple of years to actually be able to travel around, to go to many places in the world, and to try to help in a small way other people getting started, other entrepreneurs. And so I've given quite a bit of feedback, quite a bit of advice, most of it, I'm sure horrible, over the years, and I've heard how many people respond to it, many people who I think like this audience want to be entrepreneurs. And so I've boiled down my many years of entrepreneurial advice to the six basic questions. So I've kind of boiled everything down over the past couple of years to 6 basic questions, which I'll go over here. Basically the 6 W's of entrepreneurship. The 6 W's, as you probably guess, it's who, why, when, where, what, and how. The last one is wow. Which actually, as a quick tip, this works really well. Whenever you're talking to someone, this will happen every couple of years, just naturally. Like you're talking to someone and you get someone particularly flabbergasted and they want to ask, like they start asking why, but then they realize they want to ask how, and it comes out, well, how? So people will be like, well, how? Whenever that happens, I'm sure it's happened to most of you, don't take advantage of that opportunity. Look that person in the eye and say, I'll tell you well, how. It doesn't lead to anything, it's just a lot of fun. Just like when next time it happens to you, trust me, you'll be glad you did. So the 6 W's, briefly. So who should be an entrepreneur? Well, most people that I talk to, if I don't know you any better personally, I would say, not you. You should almost certainly not be an entrepreneur. At least not for the wrong reasons, and most people want to be entrepreneurs for ridiculously wrong reasons. And so what are the wrong reasons? There's an infinite number, but the most common ones are, money, right? You think that being an entrepreneur is a good way to make money. And it's just not. It's just, 90, depending on where you start counting from, 95 or 99% of businesses fail. If you're smart enough and you have the energy and the talent and the resources to be an entrepreneur, and you're trying to optimize for your lifetime net worth, it's just a stupid thing to do. It's just mathematically very low probability that this is the way to maximize your worth. What you're wanting to do is maximizing your lifetime value, your lifetime monetary value. You should just get a job. Right? You should just become a lawyer, an accountant, or an investor, or an architect, or something. Just get a job. You should stick with it. You should work your way up the corporate ladder. Your expected return is much higher than being an entrepreneur. So if you want to be an entrepreneur because you think it's a good way to make money, you're just bad at math. What's worse, you have to be pretty good at math to be successful entrepreneur. So that's already 2 strikes against you. Another common misperception, another really stupid reason is some people want to be entrepreneurs because they think, they want to be an entrepreneur, they want to be a CEO because they think it's a way to get power. They have this vision that when you're a CEO, you've got this corporate pyramid, and you're all the way at the top of the pyramid, and then under you there's this clean pyramid of everyone that reports to you, and you're kind of right at the top. And man, that is not how it works. If you're a startup CEO, yeah, there is a pyramid, but it's inverted, and you're all the way at the bottom. When you're the CEO of a startup, everybody else is your boss. All of your employees are your boss. All of your customers are your boss. All of your investors are your boss. Everyone in the media is your boss. I have never had more bosses than I do at Evernote. And the more successful you get, the more you grow, the more bosses you have. It absolutely does not feel like you're on top of anything. You're certainly not wielding and influencing power and authority over other people. If that's what you want to do, don't be an entrepreneur. I don't know, join the military, be a politician, do something like that. You're not going to get it as in a startup. Lots of other wrong reasons. Some people, I've actually had people tell me, I want to be an entrepreneur because I want to have more flexible time. I want to have more time to spend with my family. I want to have more time to spend with my kids. And no, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. You do get flexible time as an entrepreneur. You get to work any 20 hours a day you want. So if you're looking to have better work-life balance, don't be an entrepreneur. Don't start a company. In short, for almost all of the reasons what normal people think of why they want to start a company, they're just the wrong reasons. And if you have these reasons, you shouldn't do it. And there's really only one correct reason. And you know what it is. You've guessed it. It's to change the world. You can be an entrepreneur if you want to change the world. If you want to, as the famous quote attributed to Steve Jobs, put a dent in the universe. If you want to leave the world a better place than you found it. If you want the universe to notice, to take note in a small way that you had existed in it, that's a good reason to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to be an entrepreneur to change the world. There are other paths to that. You can be a great artist. You can be a great writer. You can be a great politician. I'm kidding, of course. You cannot be a great politician to change the world. But you can certainly be an artist. You can certainly be a writer. I have no talent. Those things require talent. And so the only path open to me to being able to change the world a little bit is to be an entrepreneur. So that's the path I took. And the good news is if that's the reason you want to do it, you can do things today that you could never do before. You're much more likely to succeed. Even though you'll almost certainly fail, you're still much more likely to succeed than you ever were before, than you were 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 50 years ago at any other time. So who should be an entrepreneur? Well, you, if you're doing it for the right reason, and you're completely prepared and willing and able, and most importantly, can afford to fail. Right? Failure is the thing you have to stare in the eye and you have to embrace it, because it's going to happen. And if you can't afford to fail, you just shouldn't do it. You should back out now. And that means if you can't afford to do it, psychologically, emotionally, if there's too many people, depending on you, that door should be closed to you. In fact, failure is one of the things that this country does really well. We're really good in our attitude towards failure. One of the things that I noticed, talking to entrepreneurs from all over the world, is the U.S. is definitely leading the way in our attitude towards failure. I'm not trying to be funny. It really is the healthiest attitude toward failure of any country that I've ever seen. It carries the least baggage. Failure is celebrated here. As long as you don't fail for something really bad reason, as long as you learn something, as long as you make a story out of it, it's something to celebrate. It's something to cherish. It gives you a good story. It doesn't make you less likely to succeed later. It makes you more likely. So if you can afford to fail, then I think you're the right person to be an entrepreneur. So that's the who. Why? Well, yeah, we already talked about it, right? It's to change the world. It's to change the world, and the reason why right now is the best time in the history of the universe to start a company, to change the world, is that it's different now than it ever was before. Evernote is operating in a different world than my first 2 companies did, or my first 3 companies, or whatever. Because the world right now, especially the consumer product world, but this is spreading to enterprise and to every other category, the world right now is much more of a meritocracy than it's ever been before. The business world is much more of a meritocracy than it's ever been. If you're good, if you're really good, if you make a really good product, you can succeed. And all of the other things that used to be even more important, all of the things that used to have primacy over the quality of your product, are much less important. So at my last company, at Core Street, we were making security software. And we had to worry about so much stuff other than making the best product. We had to worry about distribution. Oh well, if you're going to make a new version of our software, how are people in Pennsylvania going to be able to get it? We better have a distribution deal with some retailer that distributes through Pennsylvania, right? You don't ever think about that anymore. At least not in software, not in several other things. We used to have to worry about relationships, about channels, about all this stuff, about advertising. How are people going to know about you? What if you make a great product and no one knows about you? That's impossible today. You can't make a great product and have nobody know about you. If you come to me and you say, Phil, my main problem is I've got this great app and it's really beautiful, but nobody knows about it. The problem is your app sucks. Right? This is a mathematical certainty. If it was great, tons of people would know about it. This was never the case before, but it's the case just in the past few years because of app stores and smartphones and social media, because everyone's having 1,000 conversations a day. And what are they talking about? They're talking about what they love or what they hate. So if you want everyone to talk about you, you just have to be great or terrible. And everyone will know about you. So all of the things that used to be this giant friction that had nothing to do with how good your product was, all of those things are far less important. You still have to pay attention to them, but if you have a great product, you get 1,000,000-to-1 leverage and all the other stuff. And if you have a shitty product, then it doesn't really matter how much money you spend on marketing or advertising or anything else, you're not going to succeed. So this is completely new. This is why today is the best time ever. Where? Where should you be an entrepreneur? We're going to save a lot of time on this one because I'm speaking in Silicon Valley. So the answer is here. When I'm speaking elsewhere in the world, it's a longer answer. But actually, you know, not to be. I mean, I love it here. This is great. I moved here from Boston. It's a magic place. You know, I spent 19 years in Boston. 19 years, one more, and I think I would have been considered. No, I wouldn't have been considered from there, regardless of how long I spent there. But I spent 19 years there, and I started and sold 2 companies. You know, I raised money, I sold companies in Boston. Like, I was kind of a, you know, sort of a medium-known tech entrepreneur in Boston. And every single like investor meeting I had or partner meeting I had, I still was never meant to feel like I was from there. All of the meetings all started with like, oh, so who do you know and how did you get here? It was all just like establishing my bona fides for 19 years. And then I came to Silicon Valley. You know, the day after I arrived here, the very first, you know, investor meeting I had, the very first VC meeting I had, the attitude was like, well, you had the good sense to move here, so you're from here. It was immediately accepted, immediately. They didn't give me any money, but they immediately accepted me. So it is a great place here, and if you are here, you should take advantage of it. You should take advantage of the fact that some of the greatest people in business, both investors and entrepreneurs and CEOs, are here, and you can get to them. You can talk to them. You can have coffee or lunch with them. It's not that hard. But really, it doesn't matter that much where you are. So when people from outside of Silicon Valley ask me where they should start their business, I say, look, you should start your company wherever you have your small team of best friends that are hyper competent and super passionate and willing to work infinite hours for free and produce really great products. So wherever you have your team of best friends that are hyper competent and willing to work endless hours for free to produce great products, wherever they are, that's where you should start. And sometimes people say, well, I don't have it. There's your problem. That's what's going to get you, not the fact that you're not in Silicon Valley. So if you're here, great, you've made the smart choice. If you're only here temporarily and you're going back, you know, take advantage of it while you can, but ultimately, it doesn't matter too much anymore, because the world really is much more of a meritocracy. When is a good question. When should you do something? Should you start something? It's sort of like the secret of comedy. You know the secret of comedy? Actually, just go ahead, just all together, just ask me. Just say, what's the secret of comedy? Go ahead, everyone. Go. Timing! It's timing. The same thing with startups. It's timing. The secret of startups is timing. In particular, the right timing is you wait until the world changes so that a really important problem moves from being impossible to just being really, really hard. And then you execute. And that's the timing. That's the startup timing. So if you're starting something right now, you figure out what does that apply to? Find something that the world has changed just recently, just in the past couple of years. You can't wait too long. Wait until the world has changed in some way where an important problem, not a trivial problem, not a problem nobody cares about, an important problem has gone from being impossible to just being really, really hard, and then execute. If you do it too soon, you're trying to solve an impossible problem. It's going to take a lot of work. You're not going to get anywhere. If you do it too late, if you wait too long and it's no longer really, really hard, it's just kind of hard, or not very hard at all, it's too late. Someone's already done it. Someone already owns that market. If you're not sure, if you have an idea in your head right now and you're like, oh, where am I on that scale? And you're not sure, that's a really important question. What has changed in the world to make your idea really, really hard for the first time? And why hasn't anyone else done it? Or maybe it's not important enough. But most companies, most successful companies, I think, start at this timing. Now, of course, this is hindsight, right? It's easy to pick out examples and say, they got the timing right. It's a little bit harder when you're doing it. It's a little bit harder to actually predict than it is to look backwards. That doesn't matter, because when you're giving a talk like this, you know, I'm allowed to just look backwards and talk. I don't know. You're the ones that have the harder problem of actually figuring out how to decide this in real time. But this is very much what we did at Evernote, and then we were actually conscious of it at Evernote. So at Evernote, the idea of Evernote is maybe the least original idea in technology. We're going to use technology to help you write things down, help you remember stuff. The bet that we took was that the timing had just shifted because networks got ubiquitous. We thought that smartphones and smart devices would get ubiquitous. We didn't know about app stores. That was just blind luck. We thought that the world had just shifted so that solving that problem, building an external brain, would go from something that you can only do for a very niche, a very small number of people, tens of thousands of people, and now you could do it, if you tried really hard, you could do it for a billion people. And we thought the world had just changed like that, and I think we got that bet right. And I think lots of other companies got that bet right as well. I think like Facebook couldn't have been Facebook, 3 years earlier, right? It would have been MySpace. The world wasn't there, the technology wasn't there, the networking wasn't there, the understanding wasn't there. Google couldn't have been Google 5 years earlier, right? It would have been, I don't know, Alta Vista or whatever. This timing is crucial to get right, and even though it's hard to actually do it for real looking forward, it's easy to use it as a sanity test against your idea. So take your idea and say, does it fit into this timing? And if not, why not? And how does it work? Which kind of brings us to what? What should you build? This is probably the biggest misconception in entrepreneurship, is this fetish of the idea. The common misperception, the conventional wisdom is that successful companies, somebody has this brilliant idea, a staggeringly original idea, something that's never existed before, and that's what makes a successful company. And that almost never happens, right? Almost never. Almost all successful companies were not the first in their field. Like I said, Evernote, probably the least original idea in technology. In fact, when we were trying to raise money early on, we had the world's worst VC pitch. This was our VC pitch in 2008. This is as the world was falling apart around us. Lehman was just going under and giant economic meltdown. Our VC pitch was, I would go in, I would say, hi. My name is Phil Libin. You've never heard of me. We have this company called Evernote, and we're going to use computers and phones to, write things down, remember things. And we're going to give it away for free. Yeah. Please give me $10 million. That was it. That was the pitch. It didn't work. Most people threw us out. Sometimes they didn't throw us out right away. Out of politeness, they asked a follow-up question. They asked things like, so who's your competition? And let's say, well, I had a great answer to this one. Say, well, every single computer or phone or other device that's ever come out in the history of the universe already has a free note-taking program built into it. And then they would throw us out. And it turns out the idea doesn't matter. The original idea doesn't matter. What matters is, of course, the execution. It's the traction. It's making a beautiful user experience. One way to think about it is this. It is amazingly difficult. It takes a brilliant mind, something that I am very, 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 very far from having, to look at the world and to see what's missing. So look at the world and to see what it doesn't have and should have, and to say the world is I see the whole. I see the shape of the product, that it does not exist right now, that needs to exist, to see what's not there and to come up with it. That takes a staggering imagination that probably only comes along every couple of hundred years. It's extremely rare. But yet that's how most people think about going around trying to find an idea for a company. Most of you guys stumble around trying to think of well, what's missing? Give me some big idea. What can I do? There's a better way. A much more sensible way is to go through the world, go through your life, look at the world, and find something that you're already doing every day, or every week, or at least regularly. Something that you already do all the time, and something that lots of other people around you do all the time as well. Find something that lots of people are already doing that kind of sucks, that they're not enjoying, that they're not having a good experience with. And then figure out a way to make it a slightly better experience. And then use JavaScript or something. Find something that people are already doing that they don't like. And that's around you every day, right? Every day you can find things that people are already doing that isn't a great experience, and then don't try to come up with something that they're not doing already. Try to just make it a little bit better. Look at the world with the eyes that say, everything can be made better, everything should be made better. And then just find something that particularly annoys you and figure out a way to make it better. And most companies, I think, that are successful have started out that way. Again, Google wasn't the first search engine. Facebook wasn't the first social network. Apple wasn't the first manufacturer of anything, right? Computers or laptops or smartphones or music players, right? They were never first anywhere, and yet they just dominate the field. Find something that kind of sucks, and try to make it better. Which I think leads us to our last W. Well, how? I'll tell you how. There's a lot of answers to that. There's a lot of tips. There's a lot of tips and tricks. And basically, when you go to these entrepreneurial things, it's usually what you're getting, right? You're usually getting an assortment of tips and tricks. And I've got some too. I can give you some good ones. For example, I think it's really important to have an identity mug. That is a coffee mug that says something on it that you carry around with you all the time when you're in the office, so that it becomes associated with you, so that people like associate this mug with you. Important to have. And you have to think very carefully about what that mug is. It shouldn't be too crazy, right? Like, this is a brand that you're going to grow into. It has to be unusual, but not super fashionable, not too racy. Like, this is a mug that's going to have your identity as you go from being a startup CEO to a public Fortune 500 CEO. What should that mug be? It's a difficult decision. You have to think about it a lot. I have. God knows I've spent months thinking about the identity mug. My current identity mug is a vintage Empire Strikes Back mug. And here's the tip. This is the inside scoop on this. When you get one, get a bunch of them and hide all but one. That way, if you inadvertently lose your identity mug, you haven't just wasted 18 months trying to build it up, and you can just go and get the other one out of storage, and it's like nothing changes. In fact, people will screw with you. People will steal your identity mug at some point. You'll be like, no problem. You just got another one. So that's a tip. And there's lots of others. But there's I guess one that I want to leave you with, which is ignore conventional wisdom. Because almost everything that you hear that's conventional wisdom is wrong. And it's wrong for a perfectly good reason, right? Because when you think about it, how does something become conventional wisdom? Something doesn't become conventional wisdom because it's true. Something becomes conventional wisdom because it's easy to repeat. And it makes the person repeating it sound kind of smart. So almost everything that you hear that's conventional wisdom, almost everything is actually just wrong. Not the stuff that I say. The stuff that I say is all completely true. In fact, if you want a little heuristic to remember, what kind of advice to listen to, what kind of advice to ignore, it's pretty simple. Here's how I remember it. Anything that I say is true. Everything else deeply suspect. Easy to keep straight. So the biggest conventional wisdom when it comes to startups, when it comes to entrepreneurship, is this idea of disruption. This idea that what you're supposed to do is disrupt. And I call bullshit on the idea of disruption. Not that it doesn't happen. Not that successful companies don't disrupt existing industries or existing players. Of course it happens. But I say that happens as a side effect, as a small and unintended side effect that is completely not the central goal or the central way that you should be going about thinking how to build your company. In other words, the perception is that the value that you create as a new company, as a new technology, is somehow proportional to what you disrupt. It's somehow proportional to the value that you take away from somebody else. Right? But that's completely wrong. That is zero-sum thinking. And the most important thing that I think you can do is to refuse to play the zero-sum game. Like, just refuse it. Refuse thinking about life and about business in sports analogies, in military analogies. It's not about beating somebody else. It's not about winning. It's about succeeding. It's not about destroying value or disrupting value or taking value away. That may happen as a consequence, as a side effect, but the value that you create should be much more than the value that you take away. And that's the way it is with almost all successful companies and products, right? Like, is the value that Facebook created equal to the value that they took away from, I don't know, Orchid? Right? No. The value that they created is tens of thousands of times more. Is the value that Amazon created equal to the value that they took away from, brick and mortar shops or earlier retailers? No, it's not. It's many, many orders of magnitude higher. Is the value that Apple created with the iPod equal to the value of market share that they took away from some other MP3 manufacturer that isn't Apple that I can't think of right now? No, of course not, right? They increased the market thousands, hundreds fold. And they didn't focus on disruption. They didn't sit around thinking, how do we take market share away from, I don't know, creative? Right? They didn't care about that. They sat there thinking, how do we make something awesome that's going to get 1,000 times more people into this category that weren't here before? And if we happen to, to disrupt some people, if we happen to take away some value, well, that kind of sucks, actually. We're willing to do it, but that's not the goal. And this is actually quite different than, for example, what Microsoft tried to do later with Zune, right? Different in many ways. It's like, what did Zune try to do? Like, Zune was looking at iPod and saying, we want to take market share from that. They weren't saying, like, how do we make something totally new, totally better to expand the world, to expand by 1,000-fold the number of people that are using their product. They're saying, man, those guys are selling a lot of MP3 players. We want some of that too. Right? So they failed many of these rules, right? Many of these W questions they answered incorrectly for that product line. Other things Microsoft has done has been great. I think the Zune was not their best moment. They screwed up the when idea, right? They didn't wait. Apple didn't screw it up, right? Apple waited until the world had changed so that an important problem, having access to all of your songs in your pocket, went from being impossible, which it was before because of hard drive costs and all that stuff, to just being really, really hard, and then they solved it. Microsoft waited for a company to already prove that you can make billions of dollars and then just try to take some of that money away, right? They waited too long, and then they focused on disrupting, not on creating. So this is why most of the time people ask us about competition at Evernote. We don't have a particularly good answer because we don't think about competition. It's not because we're not threatened by it, but because it doesn't do you any good to think about it, right? Because the only way that someone can beat Evernote is to come up with something that's much better than us, and our best defense is for us to do that, for us to make the next version of Evernote so much better. We want to be the people that makes Evernote obsolete. And the only way we can do that is not to look around, not to put up barriers to entry, not to try to prevent other people from doing anything. In fact, as much as possible to try to allow other people to do something and to create as much value as we can. And lastly, this idea of alignment, right? Of making sure that all of your interests are aligned. Every important actor in the story of your company has the same interest. That means the founders are aligned with the employees, are aligned with the customers, are aligned with the investors. Everyone wants to do the same thing, and no one is thinking about destruction. No one is thinking about disruption. No one is thinking about taking value away. Everyone is thinking about creating something. That's at least what we try to do. And we're trying to build a 100-year startup. We're going to be 5 years old since the launch of the service in a couple of months. We're about 5% in to our 100-year plan, which means we're much, much closer to the starting line than the finish line. But it's been a pretty good start. And the way we want to do that is to always focus on creating something great, as much as possible actually minimizing the disruption. When it's inevitable, but certainly not focusing on it and refusing to play the zero-sum game. And I would say that for you, for entrepreneurs, anything else is beneath you. Anything else is not worth your time. It's not worth your time and it's not worth your life to sit around thinking about how you can move some value from somebody into your pocket. That is an uninteresting base way of thinking about things that is just boring. It doesn't really get you anywhere, even if it makes you a lot of money. And frankly, I think everyone can and should do better. I think that kind of philosophy is beneath you as entrepreneurs and as CEOs. But again, the good news is, if you're doing this stuff for the right reason, if you want to change the world, if you want to create value, if you aren't focused on, if you refuse to play the zero-sum game, if you're not focused on disruption, then right now is the best time in the history of the universe to do what you're trying to do. You'll still probably fail, but you have a bigger chance of succeeding than anyone who's ever come before you, because the world is a meritocracy, because the world now wants you to succeed. And even though it's very difficult, and there's going to be extremely long hours and all sorts of emotional ups and downs, and it's very, very, very lonely, still remember that it beats working. Thank you.